What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Inside the Burrow podcast. I am your new host, as someone who has already hosted the show once, Kevin Fielder, joined by a familiar face in JJ. JJ, how we doing today?
Doing good, doing good. Happy to talk some FAU sports on this nice Wednesday afternoon. How are you doing, Kevin?
I'm doing great. The weather is finally starting to cool down a little bit. It's not 95 degrees outside. It feels amazing. And then I'm joined by a new face, sort of, right? I mean, he's slightly becoming a more familiar face than I am at this point. Robbie Listella. Robbie, man, how we doing today?
Doing good. Happy to be back in Boca. We were in Tampa this weekend. We'll get into all that a little later, but we're happy to be on the show and get into some FAU hoops and baseball.
I guess there's no better way to start this podcast than I guess we should start with the good news first, because I don't want to start on the depressing news of whatever that game in Tampa was. We will start with the game at FAU against Temple. Temple making it close at the end, but FAU finding a way to win 80-68. John L. Davis leads the team in scoring with 17. Elijah Martin gives you 16. And I think the biggest one is Giancarlo Rosado returning from injury and giving really good minutes off the bench, especially in the second half. Robbie, I kind of want to start with you with, Giancarlo, him returning and him giving you that kind of performance off the bench. How encouraging is that for the remainder of this season?
It's really huge. He provides like a different type of play that really complements Vlad. That it says nothing bad about either of them. They just both really play different types of games. And so against Temple, what you saw is Vlad getting put out on the perimeter a little bit, and he was gassed. And so by the time he was, by the end of his stretches of play, he was really needed to get off the court. And Rosado would come in and give a completely different style of play that Temple just at sometimes wasn't prepared for. His types of, his ability to pass the ball is something that, impacted the game, especially late. The middle part of that game, FAU was outscored by Temple. The end of the first half and the beginning of the second half, they were outscored by 10. And those just happened to be the stretches of play where Rosado wasn't in the game at all. So that's just a little stat to show you how big of an impact he plays. And, he played a good role against USF too, and it'll just keep,
building its way up. We got the numbers on this podcast. We're bringing out stats now.
Right.
JJ, I want to go to you. And, they start the game off incredibly well against Temple. They go into halftime up 11. And as Rob mentioned, I think the end of the second half or the end of the first half isn't the most encouraging, but they're able to build a lead up 11. And for a team that, and we'll definitely talk about this in a little bit here, but for a team that struggled, start games off quickly and to build these leads, were you leaving the first half feeling a little bit encouraged that they were able to build that kind of lead up, even if it's against a team like Temple, going up 11 into halftime?
Yeah, I was. I was definitely really satisfied with the first half. I felt, very happy after a great first half. Temple, I think they scored the first 6 points. Came out super strong, super fast, hit two big threes. And, we guarded Isaiah Miller, though, pretty well. He was someone who I was really nervous about on Temple. But, yeah, I was definitely happy with the first half. And, I guess we lost a bit of focus early in the second and let them crawl back, cut it to 4, and then we just put the gas on the pedal.
Yeah, you had sort of mentioned that they found ways to contain Miller, which I think was the biggest question mark of how you may contain a guy like that. And then the biggest problem, I think, was that their big man Sam Hoffman, I believe, sort of beat you. I mean, he was beating you all game on the on the 3-point line. And that's something Dusty May had mentioned after the game, is that that's really the biggest reason why they brought in Rosado instead of Vlad, because they needed someone who could guard the perimeter slightly better. And I don't think Vlad was doing a terrible job defending it, but I do sort of agree that when you look at where they were beating you, Carroll and Rosado made a lot more sense than Vlad did in that game. So, Robbie, I want to go back to you. What does it say about a team like FAU, do you think, were they able to go, bring in a completely different kind of player in Rosado compared to Vlad and still find ways to win the game late?
Well, that's what's going to help them compete when it comes to the AAC tournament in March. Like that, people said FAU's one of their biggest drawbacks is they don't have the height. Well, they have the height, they just don't have it in, a lot of it. And so, but, to be able to do it differently is what's going to surprise teams, and it's what's going to help them compete against other teams. I mean, just to be able to throw Rosado in there and still have Vlad, before they sub him out, compete on the perimeter with guys like Hoffman who draw him out of the paint. It's just huge. I mean, Vlad's not the most, elite perimeter defender, but the fact that he's able to do it just shows how, the unit works together. Rosado, even when he wasn't playing, I'm sure he was coaching up Vlad on how to be a better perimeter defender. And his perimeter defense, for his credit, has been good this season.
And I guess we'll sort of continue with the guys off the bench because I thought Jalen Gaffney had a great game. Didn't put up the numbers, but did a lot of things defensively that I thought helped them down the stretch. Obviously, you have Brandon Weatherspoon who gives you 16. So JJ, this is a team that has prided itself on being deep and priding itself on being able to go 3, even 4 guys off the bench. What needs to change so that, those guys can keep playing at a high level when we get down the stretch? Because as we'll talk about, it isn't always perfect.
Yeah, for sure. FAU, as you mentioned, you hit the nail on the head. They're one of the most deepest teams, and they can play 3, 4 guys off the bench. Giancarlo Rosado, Brandon Weatherspoon, Jalen Gaffney. You've even seen some Brennan Lorient and some Trey Carroll recently. So what really has to happen is all 4 of those guys coming off the bench are able to shoot from the perimeter. A little less from Brennan Lorient, but if those guys are hitting their threes well, then the sky's the limit for FAU. You look at Brendan Weatherspoon, sharp three-point shooter. His strength is from the perimeter, as well as Jalen Gaffney. I mean, he can also shoot the 3 well. Trey Carroll, one of the best big men shooters in all of the American Conference. So you got to keep taking shots from the guys off the bench, and eventually they'll fall. And I want to see FAU continue to do that. And I think that's kind of what helped them last year. I mean, you saw guys where you didn't have to rely on one person. You got guys off the bench. You saw Michael Forrest, Jalen Gaffney, Brandon Weatherspoon, guys off the bench coming in, making huge, contributing massively to this team and playing huge roles. And FAU is going to need them come tournament time.
I want to end this off on a little question that we'll do for both of you. Knowing what happened in the next game, obviously we can't really forget that, and we will get to that, let's be clear. But what was the most encouraging thing that you left the stadium after the Temple game where you were like, this is incredibly encouraging for FAU, given either some of their struggles or as we get into the later part of the season? Robbie, we'll start with you. Most encouraging thing from that win.
It was continuing to build in the USF game as well, but it started. Elijah Martin has looked good over the past since the end of the Wichita State overtime period. He went 3 for 3 with a 3 in that. I think he had 7 points, and then the next game versus Temple, he had 16, and then 17 versus USF. That might be switched, but point being is he's been able to put together 2 games of consistent basketball plus the overtime period. I think, he needs to build on that and get back to being, his dominating self that he was towards the end of the season last year.
I think you mentioned that because this was sort of going to be mine as well. So first of all, screw you for stealing mine. But second of all, I think that the biggest thing is that you're seeing Elijah Martin get into a groove, right? And, even I had talked about on this podcast before of this team is better when Elijah Martin is playing well. And that's not really a surprise. Every team in the country is better when their second best player is playing well. But, he had struggled at points this season. And, it is encouraging when Elijah Martin can get going and provide you that secondary scoring option because, there are going to be moments where Nelly just struggles to hit his shots during games. I don't think anyone is worried when Nelly misses 3 shots in a row. But, you need to be able to find different ways to play. So it's not as much just Nelly being Nelly, because he, as special as he is, you don't want to get into March having to rely heavily on one guy, because last year FAU made it as far as they did by being able to rely on multiple guys, including Elijah Martin, Nelly Davis. Vlad gave you good games. I think even Nick Boyd gave you good games. He obviously hit the game-winning shot against Memphis, who we get to talk about again this episode. But JJ, will go to you as well. Most encouraging thing from the win.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's Elijah Martin. And no one's been harder on Elijah Martin than myself. I think that he was taking too many shots before and they weren't going in. And he was sort of being the guy where he's going to drive the ball in important moments, which I didn't like it. But he's seemed to really improve his shot, his shooting form. I think he's too strong on most of the threes. You always see them missing too deep. And I think he's really improved that. And I'm super proud of Elijah Martin. But, you know, when you can have Elijah Martin play good, this team is going to be very good. Kevin, I really, really want to say this because I can't hold it back. Saying Elijah Martin is the second best player on this
Is
team.
he not?
No, he's not in the top 4. So
Wow.
yeah, you have Vlad Golden, who I'd take easily over Elijah Martin, who you'd obviously take a 7'1" center who can get inside the paint and score almost every time over him. Nick Boyd as well. You know, he's sharper from the perimeter. And Brandon Weatherspoon, better defender, as well as John L. Davis easily. So
I
I
don't
think Elijah's, somewhere from 5 to 7 on this team. But
I don't know
I
if I
can't
agree
hold
with
it
any
back
of that.
when you say he's
I
the
don't
second
I
best
don't
player
know
on
if I
the
agree with
team.
any of that. I'm just gonna go quickly here. Like, I don't know if I agree with any of that because Elijah Martin, even if he's not the most talented perimeter defender on this team, he is still among the top 3, right? And last year they put him on a lot of guys during the NCAA tournament and forced him to make stops. And to that same degree, like when you have a guy like that who can score like he does and is capable of putting up 15, 16 points when he, on a good day, on a good day it's like 30, but like when he could put up 16 points and give you that kind of defense, like I think that makes him the second most important player. But we don't really need to get in this argument because unfortunately, as much as I would like to get into this argument, we unfortunately have to talk about the elephant in the room of some sorts. FAU heads up to St. Petersburg, Tampa area, and I think there's no other way to say it than just disappoints, right? Like I don't know if there's a better, and if either of you have a better word for it, then we can go there. But like they just disappoint, right? They show up flat. They struggle from 3. They struggle to shoot the ball consistently on offense, and then on defense, it seems like every shot USF puts up in the first half goes in. I think they shot like 61% from 3 in the first half, and they were shooting the ball a ton from 3. It was not like they were shooting the ball 3 times. They were shooting the ball a lot. And JJ, I see your face, so I think we'll just start with this. We've had, I think, 3 days, 4 days since the loss. What's the feeling like now that we are Wednesday, recording this Wednesday afternoon after that disappointing game in Tampa?
Yeah, so starting with the feeling, like I don't feel good. My immediate reaction, like I'll get into that later, it wasn't that bad because we fought super hard, down 70-45, coming back, cutting it to 1 point, relying on some great defense there towards the end. But what I think really is bad is, as you mentioned, Kevin, they shot 61%. That's pretty much happening every single time versus FAU. The other team is shooting lights out. And at first, I thought it was just a coincidence that teams are just, it's their biggest game versus FAU. They bring their 10% extra effort. But it's not. It's happening repeatedly and repeatedly and repeatedly. And the definition of insanity is having the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And that is what FAU is doing. The defense has been absolutely pathetic. You can't put Vlad in drop coverage. You are playing defense so bad. You let Chris Youngblood and Magell, they were both banking off threes from literally every single spot on the court. You have to play more aggressive defense. You played like 3 guys in zone towards the start of the game. Like had 2 guys man to man. We put 3 guys in the back at zone. I think it was Witherspoon, Golden, and Martin. But I
Yes.
really think that putting Vlad in drop coverage is bad, and I think that FAU has to fix something. They have to be more aggressive on defense. And, for me, defense is a lot about effort. And the reason they were able to play defense well is because when they were down by 25, they played with a little more effort. Going back to the feeling part, I actually felt good. This team was down 70-45. They had all the options to quit. This was 11 minutes in the second half. They had all the options to quit. They had all the options to just play the younger guys, give them experience. This team is relentless. They fought back till the end. I was super proud. We almost won this game against a super good USF team in the hardest environment. This was a 70-45 game. And the fact that we fought back, crazy, crazy, super proud. And think about this. If USF had missed one 2-pointer, we would be leading the game with 20 seconds left in the second half. So there shouldn't be that much negative besides starting out slow. And I don't think that's going to happen much more because I believe in Dusty and I believe he will make some big changes.
I wanted to start with this, and JJ sort of gives me the perfect segue to you, Robbie, of the slow start. I mean, again, it's another game I feel like where they sort of just struggle to get things going early and they go down a lot. And I think the thing about college basketball is like you can sort of come back sometimes and make that an interesting game, but eventually it's going to come back, right? And it's going to come back and bite you in the behind. And it did against USF. Like they were able to build the game back, but eventually, like it's hard to maintain and end a game on a 26-point run, right? Like, Robbie, how concerning is it that it feels like every time we hop on one of these episodes, we're talking about some of the struggles of starting fast? And I guess sort of the second part of that is like, what do you think is the biggest issue as to why they're starting the game so slow?
I don't know. Dusty doesn't have an answer either, which is really surprising considering, that he's not a man who's stumped very often. But it's tough to really pinpoint, right? Because it'll be different things every game. Sometimes the shots won't be falling. Sometimes, we just get like this game was just really the shots were falling for some people in the first half, but we get killed with a barrage of triples, and it's tough to really match that. It was close. It was close. It was close. And then Miguel hits those three triples in a row. And it's just tough to match that sometimes. But it's definitely a problem because it's happening on a consistent basis. I think the biggest thing is trying to find someone that has it early. Rather, the FAU's mindset is really to pass the ball around consistently and try to find the best shot each possession. And that works. And it's obviously, it's the best way to play basketball, but at some point they need to find someone who has a hot hand early and get them going. Specifically against USF, we saw Vlad was able to physically dominate in the second half, especially offensively. Rebound-wise, it was a bit of a struggle, but he was able to put up 23 and really if he got the ball next to the basket, it was going in, especially late second half. So I don't know. May not be the answer every game, but versus USF, if he was more physical in the first half, or especially early in the first half, I think FAU would have been able to come out on top. But I think that's just something to build on.
And I think JJ brought up a good point in his discussion of like the drop coverage was Vlad, and that's something that I had problems with during the game was they were dropping a lot of things, and I get why you do it, right? Because Vlad, you don't want him caught on a guard at the perimeter, but to that same degree, if you go under on every screen, USF is just going to start shooting, man. And they started shooting, right? And like either you get really lucky and the shots don't fall, and like I don't think that's also a bad strategy, right? To like just sort of be like, hey man, if you want to take an early shot clock three and hope it goes in all the time, sure. But this is a USF team that had sort of built their game on shooting the ball. And you sort of played right into their hands when you go drop coverage as much as they do. And they had sort of changed that in the second half. And I think you saw the results of it when, USF comes out the second half. I think they hit 1-3 and they shoot 16% from the 3-point line. When you go from shooting 60 to shooting 16, it's normally a change in defense, right? The shots don't magically stop falling. I think that like the biggest thing for me is in terms of slow starts, like Robbie, as you mentioned, it's time to find someone who can go get you a couple quick buckets, right? Because like if it's Nelly, if it's Elijah, if it's Vlad in the paint when they're playing these teams with smaller bigs, like someone's got to get you buckets, right? And I think Elijah Martin found ways to do it at points, but still like the offense was stagnant. The defense wasn't helping you out. And like, that's a recipe for disaster. we'll end this discussion here because I don't think any of us want to go into a 20-minute conversation about this game. But they do come back, right? And they do make this game interesting, and they get a shot with Nelly driving to potentially, I think it was tie the game or win the game. Uh, I I don't really care about the discussion of if it's a good shot or not. You live with that shot when it's Nelly Davis, right? You live with that shot when it's Jonell Davis because he can hit that shot, right? And whether it's too early in the shot clock or whatever, right? Like whatever, right? It's so hard to get shots off in college basketball, especially late game. But the biggest thing is when you come back down 25 with like 9 minutes left and you're able to make this an interesting game. How much can you take from that, and how encouraging does that leave you, Robbie, knowing that, as JJ had mentioned, and he'd sort of answered this question of like, when you're able to come back and win this game late, have a chance to win this game late, how encouraging is that, and how much can you take from that heading into, I think, the final like 4 games of the season?
Well, I think it's really important, all right? I mean, the difference in getting blown out by 25 in that game and then getting blown out or then losing by 4 is huge. I mean, it's good for the mindset of the team. It's good for the net rankings. It's good for everything important. And what to take away from that going forward is just to continue to have that wherewithal, understand that, listen, we were down 25 on the road in that environment. We almost came back. They can play in an NCAA tournament environment where maybe there won't be that many FAU fans compared to whatever massive fan base comes in there. So I think there's a lot of learning moments, and like always, they're not going to get too down about it. I mean, they lost to FGCU and came back and had played fine. So it's just, this game is nothing like FGCU. USF's a good team. It was a game you might lose, and they lost it. They just gotta bounce back, and I think they will. I think this next game will be somewhere where we see FAU really make a statement, because it's a chance to make a statement against a very good SMU team.
JJ, final question before we head into the preview of this next week's slate, because I think we're both probably really excited for these next 2 games coming up. But I seen that you tweeted something about how you feel like it is now must-win time for FAU, and I think you had specifically mentioned that you think they have to win the next 5 games to clinch that large spot. Do you not see a situation where if they go 4-1, they are clinching an at-large spot heading into the conference tournament?
Yeah, so I was talking with a few bracketology experts yesterday, about FAU, because this is something that really interests me. I mean, getting in bracketology is huge, and as an FAU team that is able to be in some bracketologies and is not on the bubble, but sort of getting closer to the bubble so far, you gotta start looking at scenarios this close to the end of the season, as you have 5 more games on the schedule. So if you go 4-1, you're not guaranteed. Say this team slips up first round of the AAC tournament. If you go 4-1, have a loss at Memphis, at North Texas, or SMU, and you go 4-1, you should be in if you win a game in the American Conference Tournament. 1 game, you should be in. 5-0 guarantees it. Because if you go 5-0, the worst you can do on the season is 7 losses. That'd be 3 conference losses, 3 out of conference losses with a win over a number 1 overall seed in Arizona, as they are a number 1 overall seed in the committee. And that win is going to carry them throughout the entire season. You got to keep hoping your big teams that you beat keep on winning. Virginia Tech had a huge win over Virginia this Monday in a game where, Virginia is not a bad basketball team. That was huge. And Virginia Tech is becoming a quad 1 win. I think they're like 55th in the net. They have to be a top 50 to be a quad 1 win. You have Butler, who is a team where they have been off to not a good stretch so far, where they've lost 3 straight. You got to keep hoping they win. And, Texas A&M, another team who dropped 3 in a row as well. If those 3 teams continue to, or not continue, but start doing well, and you go 4-1, you could be guaranteed. But when you look at this bracketology slate, you're sitting at a 6 seed in ESPN, an 8 seed in CBS, a 9 seed in what's it called? A 9 seed in like the committees, like projection thingy. So, you gotta start winning these games. It is a must win game. If FAU goes 4-1, I'm confident. 3-2, you have to win the AAC tournament to make 3-2. You have to win the AAC tournament to make March Madness.
We're not going to look too far into the AAC tournament because that is still, I think, a few weeks away. And there are 2 games on the slate for this week, though, so let's focus on those. We'll start with the one time we'll get to play them before they head off to greener pastures, somewhat in the ACC. SMU, 9-7 or 19-7, not 9-7, 19-7 on the year, 10-3 in conference, and they're coming off a huge win, against Memphis, who we'll get to them later. I guess we'll start with you, Robbie. What stands out about SMU on paper, and sort of what are you looking for from FAU in this game?
Well, everything stands out about SMU. They're efficient offensively, defensively. They're a solid basketball team, but they're not. But there's nothing like super. There's no one really that's like you look at them, in my opinion, and you're like, wow, this is the best player in the AAC. What SMU is able to do is they're able to do a lot of different things offensively. They're able to score from the perimeter. They're able to get down low. They have 2 guys, 2 forwards really that handle the paint for them. So they've won, I think it's 6 in a row. They haven't lost a game. They've only lost 1 game this whole year by 10 points or more. So it's like they've been able to stay in all these games and just do different things to win. It'll be another tough AAC battle, in my opinion. And we'll see what happens. I think FAU is going to look to come out of the gates early, like we've been saying, but SMU, on the other hand, is able to contain them. So we'll see.
JJ, Robbie sort of mentioned that there isn't a guy who stands out in terms of being like, I guess, as he mentioned, like an all-conference first team kind of guy. And I think that this is a team that is sort of a sum of their entire parts. They have 2 guys who average at least 13 a game, and that's Surich Phillips and Chuck Harris, and they're both good players, but neither of them are like scary to the extent of like they're capable of putting up 45 or 50 against you. But JJ, who on that team, I guess, concerns you the most, or who are you watching closely as FAU plays them on Thursday?
I'm looking at Surich Phelps. Surich Phelps is someone averaging 15 points a game and is probably one of the better defenders in the American Conference. He's someone who brings so much value to this SMU team. I believe he's 3rd in all American Conference players on Evan Myers plus minus, which is a great site to look at. And he has, I believe, the 2nd best defensive BPR in all of the American Conference. Great defender. Really working on that shot, 23% from 3. But, the last few games, he's not been bad. Combined for, I think, like 39, 38 in his last 2 games, as he had 19 versus Memphis and Tulane, so 38. And he's someone who scares me. But also, when you look at this SMU team, you see they have 3 forwards in their starting lineup in Samuel Williamson, Tyreek Smith, and Keon Ambrose Hilton. All those guys are 6'9". So they're gonna play 3 forwards in their starting lineup. That is concerning to me because FAU has 1 big guy in their starting lineup in Vlad Golden, and everyone else is between 6 feet, from Brian Greenlee being 6 feet to John L. Davis 6'4". Nick Boyd in the middle, I think 6'3". Elijah Martin 6'2" in the middle. So you see that they have 3 forwards, SMU, 2 guys 6'9". 3 guys 6'9" in that starting lineup. And the guy that concerns me the most is Surich Phelps. But, when I look at SMU as a team, those 3 guys are huge. You're going to want to see Trey Carroll, Brennan Laurier, Giancarlo Rosado come in with Vlad maybe. Maybe see Vlad and Carroll or Vlad and Rosado playing at the same time. I mean, versus Wichita State, we saw Carroll and guarding Wichita's big man the entire time. And Carroll is someone who is capable of that, as well as G and as well as Orient and Vlad Gold.
Robbie, I want to go with you. As we talked about, obviously coming off that loss in Tampa, what's the most important thing that FAU needs to do to make sure that that doesn't become a losing streak and it's just a one-off game?
Well, I think, like we've said, they need to come out early. And I think in this game, it's finding a way to have Vlad succeed against those forwards that are going to be guarding him. He has a little bit of a size advantage. I mean, if they throw a double at him, that's tough. Then they'll have to find a different way to succeed. But I think if we could, like you said, have him come out early and get a couple buckets, and get them going, be physical, set the tone. I think that's a good way for them to come out and really make a statement in this game. But what can't happen is they can't come out slow and allow SMU's offense to get going, because I just don't think SMU is a team that's going to give up, a second half run like that we saw in the USF matchup. So we'll see. But I think it's important that we come out early, and I think Vlad is physical early as well.
JJ, same question to you. Most important thing that FAU needs to do to make sure they don't turn this into a losing streak?
Yeah, like Robbie said, SMU is one of the teams that comes out fast. They were up, 30 against Memphis at halftime, 25-30. And they're super scary. They're a super scary team. Great metrics, 34 in the net, 39 in Ken Palm. Those would be quad one games if SMU was 3 spots higher or 4 spots higher in the net, or if this game was on the road or a neutral site. It should be a quad one game. SMU is a team who's super scary, has a bunch of guys can score, doesn't shoot well, so you have to, guard down low, key, and I like them to roll with the hot hand and John L. Davis early.
And I guess we'll finish this off with score predictions for this game before we get into arguably the most anticipated game heading into the season. Robbie, who wins and by how much?
Let's see. FAU is going to win this one, and it's going to be a close game. I think the first half it'll be SMU up by 4 at the break, and then SMU or FAU will win by anywhere from 6 to 10. Give me FAU 90-82.
JJ, same question to you. Who wins by how much and what's the score?
Yeah, most definitely. This is a game where I think SMU can win. And I've been picking the Owls all season long. And this SMU's the hottest team in the AAC right now, besides South Florida. I think they've won like 6, 7 in a row. I'm not
that
sure.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And beat a North Texas team, beat a Memphis team. Very hot, very high in the metrics. And I think that this is a game that this is their biggest game left on the schedule. And it's probably the hardest team still left on FAU's schedule in the regular season as a team. And I just think that SMU can win this game. It's just so hard because FAU is the home team and they just lost a heartbreaker to South Florida, where I think they're going to have that little bit more motivation than SMU. And I think this is going to be a close game, really close. I think both these teams are even. SMU, in my opinion, is the second best team in talent-wise in the AAC behind us. And I think FAU wins on a John L. Davis buzzer beater, 84-83. And George Phelps gives us a lot of problems. Their size also is going to give us a lot of problems.
I think you guys hit the nail on the head on this one, at least for me, in the sense of this feels like if there was a game FAU loses down the stretch, this feels like the one. And this is a good SMU team. This is an SMU team that is going to cause problems, that could very well find themselves, winning the AAC or being in the NCAA tournament, depending on how, I guess, sort of things fall. But I also feel like FAU just finds a way to win this. And maybe it's like the bias in me, right? To be like, well, FAU wins this. But I think FAU finds a way to win this because they know they have to find a way to win this. And I think it's going to be high scoring. I think it's going to be a crazy game. I think that this is going to be a back and forth game that FAU is just going to have to survive for a long time. But if they can find a way to survive this, like this is a huge win under their belt. Give me FAU 76, SMU 70. So 6-point win for FAU. And now I guess we'll head into the game. I don't know what to market this. It would have been the game if one of these teams looked a little bit better this season. That is, of course, Memphis. Started the season off promising, and then I guess every single domino that could have fallen to make this a little bit less encouraging has somewhat fallen. Memphis heading into this game on Sunday at 18-8, 7-6 in conference. They're riding a 2-game losing streak against SMU in North Texas. And, I was reading some stuff, and Penny Hardaway had sort of said that their head coach, Penny Hardaway, had sort of said that all of this started to collapse when Caleb Mills, their I guess, star player, went down with an injury. And, these are two teams that are on different trajectories this season. JJ, I want to start with you because I saw your face when I mentioned Memphis and struggling. I guess we'll just go Memphis. What is happening? Because I've tried to sort of break down what's happening, and even I can't really explain what's happening in Memphis right now.
I can. And, I've spent so much time, leading up to this game, so much energy on Spaces talking about this game. First off, I'm just so happy it's here. CBS, really big game in Memphis. Can't wait to destroy them. But, what happened with this Memphis team? This is a Memphis team where their starting lineup is transfers. They had Javon Quinterly transferred from Alabama, Caleb Mills transferred from Florida State, Jordan Brown transferred from Louisiana, and so on. And these guys don't have chemistry with each other. They met 2 months prior to playing basketball. And when Caleb Mills went down, that was their defense. Like, Memphis's defense isn't good at all. And you saw them get a mid-season transfer. I didn't know that was possible. They just got a guy from Kansas State in the middle of the season, in Naquan Tomlin, out of nowhere. He just came when they were number 10 in the country. They got him. And I'm not sure what happened, but, since he's come, they've lost like a bunch in a row. And I think Memphis is a team where they have the talent. We've seen them beat teams like Clemson, like Virginia by 30, and Arkansas and Michigan. So we've seen them beat good teams. It's just not gelling right now. And what happened this week, North Texas and SMU are really hard places to play. But losing both of them by a lot isn't great. You also lose at Rice, home versus Rice. That's really, no disrespect to Rice, but losing home to Rice is kind of embarrassing. And this team has chemistry issues. David Jones is the main guy for them. But to go apart, what happened is, if you watch Penny's press conference, he said this Memphis team is two different teams. The first half of the season, they went 13-2. That's non-conference play. And this is a completely different team without Caleb Mills, who's went 7-6. Because what has happened is David Jones could have played the 4 with Caleb Mills. They were smaller and they had more guards. But now with Tomlin coming in, Penny is trying to make a different, this team better. And he said he hasn't figured it out. But Memphis clearly doesn't care about these games. They just want to win the tournament. And Penny said the next 5 games are meaningless. And we're just going to experiment different things and get ready for the tournament. Because that's the only way Memphis makes it to March Madness. They just really fell off.
You mentioned someone who I was going to bring up next, and there's no better time to bring him up, David Jones, who we mentioned that SMU doesn't have a scorer. Memphis has a scorer. David Jones, to his credit, finds ways to score. And he's heading into this game averaging 22 points per game, scored 33 in the loss to SMU. Robbie, what stands out about his game, and how does FAU, I guess, contain him? Because judging by the box score, not many teams have been able to stop him.
Yeah, I mean, well, for starters, let me just say, like, how many good players have come from St. John's before, like, last season? But anyway, uh, but anyway, no, getting into him in his current state, he's able to do so many different things. He's able to shoot the three ball. He's able to drive and shoot off the dribble. He's able to get down low. He's also able to defend for his own credit. He's really just a guy that may leave Memphis and go to the NBA right after this season. He's just has that capability. He's like, in my opinion, like he's a combination of John L and Elijah's games. I don't think he's better than either of them per se, but I think he does a lot of their things well. A lot of what they do in their own game, he does it well as well. And I just don't know if he's going to be able to win them games alone. I think they need to get back to playing team basketball.
They like to get David Jones to the left elbow. That's like his sweet spot. Getting him inside the paint, not inside the paint, but inside like the lane, like where he's inside the 3-point line and he's just butter from that shot. He's someone who lost his parents at a young age out of the Dominican Republic. Always loved basketball, and this is his third school, and he's really showing his talent right now. I mean, as you guys mentioned, 22 points a game, and he's shooting 43% from three. Um, he doesn't move the best. Like it's not as fluid as John L. Davis. He's more of a catch and shoot guy from inside, or you'll see him getting to the hoop well. But I've been talking to a lot of Memphis fans, and the one thing that they've mentioned the entire time is that David Jones is the only player on this team who still cares, who's still playing with effort. And it seems like everyone else has given up for him.
And of course, as they had mentioned, like this is sort of surprising because last year these two teams met in the round of 64, and the game was completely different. And of course, Memphis lost the key players from that team, particularly Kendrick Davis and the big man Williams. I forgot his first name, but like they went into this season looking good, and it looked like the expectation was that it was going to be FAU versus Memphis for the American. And I think if anyone had said that after the March game, I think everyone would agree because that game was incredible. And obviously, Nick Boyd hits the game winner as time expires. But I guess, JJ, going to you, what is another player on this team, if you can think of one that sort of stands out to you as a player that FAU needs to keep their eye on?
Yeah, most definitely. And the guy that I'm looking at is Naquan Tomlin. As I mentioned, Naquan Tomlin, they saw FAU saw him versus Kansas State in the round of or Elite Eight in last year's March Madness, and they did a good job versus him. But he obviously wants his revenge after the ending of that game wasn't great, but I think he had like a good game, like 15, 16 points versus FAU. And he transferred from them to Memphis, and he's been pretty well. He's a big guy who shoots the three well. He's averaging 11 points and 5 rebounds, but he's been pretty good. He spaces the floor out very well, and you see him getting like multiple alley oops as I've seen multiple games. They like to give him those alley oops inside. So if I'm FAU, I watch out for Naquan Tomlin a lot.
Naquan Tomlin, for anyone wondering, scored 14 points in the loss to FAU in the Elite Eight. He was sort of Kansas State's third player last year behind Keontae Johnson and Marquise Noel. Robbie, let's do this quickly. Score predictions as Memphis heads one way and FAU heads, I guess, closer to the NCAA tournament. Who wins and by how many?
Give me FAU 85-75 by 10 points, and I think FAU leads wire to wire, although it's close in the first half.
JJ, same question to you.
I've been waiting for this moment for a very long time. And I know what this game is, how this game is going to go. FAU is going to come out super hungry, super hungry. This summer, Nick Boyd and John L. Davis and Brian Greenlee were on Spaces with the Memphis fans, with Will and whatever those guys, Brandon, and they were talking so much trash. I know those guys have that in their mind. They're going to crush the heck out of Memphis. They're absolutely going to curb stomp smack Memphis, and it is not even going to be close. John L. Davis and Nick Boyd. Nick Boyd's going to have some revenge. He's going to absolutely SHI on this Memphis team. He's going to destroy this Memphis team. John L. Davis is going to get inside the paint. He's going to cook up David Jones, who will probably be on him. And FAU is going to destroy Memphis. Give me the Owls 101 to 82.
I'll just say this quickly. I think FAU wins by 12. 83. What's 83 minus 12? Someone help me out here. I'm not good at 71. I'm good at math. Don't doubt me. Robbie, one more question about Memphis before we head on to from hardwood to diamond with FAU baseball. But what's one thing that stands out about Memphis outside of David Jones, outside of Tomlin, that could give FAU problems?
They got some big men, like JJ was saying, between Naquan Tomlin, Malcolm Dandridge. Those two guys could give FAU problems. It's just, and Jordan Brown as well. It depends if it all comes together. All those guys on their own really aren't going to give FAU problems, but if they're able to play as a team, I mean, we'll see what happens. But their height and length definitely could be an issue for FAU.
Yeah, of course, as we've mentioned, this is very much a Memphis team that if they want to play at their level, could absolutely give FAU a ton of problems. But so far this season, they have not played to that level consistently during conference play. Let's head over to the Diamond, where FAU played a top 10 nationally ranked Vanderbilt team. I forgot their team name, and I shouldn't because they're one of the best in the country. And FAU had a chance to take two from them. They come back in the first game of the series, lead heading into the final inning, and it's just hard to beat a team like Vanderbilt. And then they do it again. They do actually beat them in the second game, finish this series taking 1 of 3. JJ, sort of biggest takeaway for you from, I guess, that series and then heading into this home opener against Towson?
Yeah, for sure. First off, I want to give a shout out here. I know he wanted me to do it. Rick Henderson gave me a lot of information on the FAU baseball, like the team itself, because I didn't know a lot about it. Rick Henderson, first of all, he's someone who is behind the scenes, but he does a lot for FAU and with the Owl's Nest organizing everything. So shout out to Rick Henderson. First, you can follow him on Twitter at Florida Owl, and he is like the founder and the head of the Owl's Nest. So, great guy, and shout out to him. He gave me a lot of information on this baseball team. So everything about this baseball series was pretty good, except the first part of the first game, CJ Williams had some nerves on the mound, but we played very well. I think we scored like 5 runs in an inning to make it 9-8. We saw Emilio Gonzalez and Brandon LaRox being the guys who, were like the key guys for FAU from hitting. Brandon LaRox with that huge home run double from 9-9 to make it 11-9, and FAU should have won that game. They were 1 strike away like 3 times in the 9th inning, and missed a pop fly to end up sealing that game. Game 2 is awesome. 5-4 win. You were down 4-1 and had a 4-run inning, also led by Emilio Gonzalez. And FAU baseball game 3 was a little slow, but going into it, the pitching was supposed to be pretty good, and hitting was a wild card because you lost like 4 guys transferred to the SEC, and you lost Nolan Shanuel as well, top 10 pick. So hitting was obviously a wild card. You didn't know it was going to go, but it's overexceeded expectations. I will say one thing though, and I know this is like hurting a little bit of FAU fans' expectations, but I don't think Vanderbilt is all that great. They just lost a game yesterday, 8-5 to, I believe, Eastern Kentucky, was it? And then they lost to Dayton as well, in their last 2. So I think they're 2-3, maybe 2-2. I know they lost to Dayton, but I don't think they're that great. I still think it's overexceeding expectations to win a game. We were 11.5-point underdogs for the series, so definitely did better than expectations.
Robbie, go to you. Home series opener coming up against Towson. What does FAU need to do to make sure that they can, I think, as many would expect, come out of that series winners of the series, potentially taking all three?
Just continue to build off the strong bullpen play that we saw in that game. I mean, the 11-1 blowout wasn't the best, but they still got through it in that one. And then the other two games, you had Brian Booley come in the win, pitch 3 2/3, have 6 Ks. I think JJ may have mentioned that. And then Danny Trahey in the first game kept it close. He went 2 innings, had 4 Ks. So, our starting pitching is young and new, but if we're able to get them some solid first innings and have our bullpen follow them up, the hitting will come. It may not come in the one game against Vanderbilt, but against a team like Towson, I think it's a team. It's really a rebound series. Towson hasn't been the best. They struggled last year and they've lost a couple to start the season this year. So it's really just a chance for FAU to get the season rolling.
And I do just want to give a mention to two guys. Two bats who actually did impress. It wasn't, again, as Robbie mentioned, very consistent, but thought Brandler series and finishes with the home run, finishes with 5 RBIs, excuse me. Bats over 300, and then I guess the star of the show was John Schroeder, who bats close to 500, was hitting the pill out of the baseball all series long. And I think, as you mentioned, right, like that sort of probably comes around, and I think it probably comes around against Towson because Towson has struggled, right? And Towson played this like really weird series layout where they played Bucknell and Wofford. They played Wofford first, and then they played Bucknell twice, and then they were like, "Yeah, we have to play Wofford again." I don't know if that was like a rain delay thing. It could have very well been a rain delay thing, but like, this is a team that has struggled. To sort of have any consistent pitching so far this season. So FAU, if they can find those bats early on here, it helps them as they get into some of the tougher games on their schedule. That's it for us, though. Obviously, exciting time in men's basketball as they head to SMU, or they don't head to SMU. They play SMU at home, and then they head to Memphis. Robbie, I know you'll be in Memphis, so hopefully you all make it there in one piece.
Oh man, we'll
with
see.
the Spirited Frontier flights. We'll see.
Yeah. Prayers up.
Regardless, JJ, will you be there in Elvis's Graceland area, or Memphis, as some people call it?
No,
Okay.
I will not be.
So,
yeah.
Robbie will be holding it down for us
I
in
really don't want to
Memphis, Tennessee.
go there.
Regardless, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. You can follow, make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter. Follow FAU's Owl's Nest on Twitter. For JJ, for Robbie, I'm Kevin. And of course, go Owls.